I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but here I am, sitting in front of my laptop, fingers trembling over the keys, ready to share the mess that my life has become. It all started a few months ago when my wife, Melanie, began changing. It was subtle at first, just little things that gnawed at the back of my mind like a low hum of unease. Melanie, at 30, was a successful lawyer with a decent career. I'd always admired her ambition, but suddenly, she started working late hours more frequently than ever before. It felt like she was constantly at the office, often returning home after I'd already settled into bed. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, wondering what she was doing. Was she really just buried in cases, or was there something more sinister happening? Then there was her newfound obsession with the gym. I remember when we first got married, Melanie would roll her eyes at the thought of exercising. But lately, she was practically living at the gym. Every time I turned around, she was either getting ready for a workout or coming home with that post-gym glow, sweaty and exhilarated, like she'd just conquered the world. I wanted to be supportive, to cheer her on, but a pit formed in my stomach every time she rushed off, wearing those tight yoga pants that left little to the imagination. Then came the phone. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She'd be glued to it, scrolling or texting away, her face lit up in the dim light of our bedroom. I'd try to peek over her shoulder, and she'd quickly shift it out of view, flashing me a smile that felt more like a cover-up than genuine affection. I started to notice strange charges in her bank statements, too, suspicious ones that raised red flags. A couple of visits to places I'd never heard of before, and they weren't cheap. One evening, after she'd left for yet another late night at the office, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I met up with my buddy Declan at our usual bar, drowning my worries in a few stiff drinks. He was also in IT, and I knew he'd been through a rough patch with his own wife, who had cheated on him. As we traded war stories, I couldn't help but share my doubts about Melanie. Declan listened intently, his expression serious as I recounted my suspicions. "Man, you have to trust your gut," he said, his voice low. "I didn't listen to mine, and it cost me everything. If you think something's off, it probably is. You need to figure out what's going on before it's too late." That's when it hit me. I needed proof. I went home that night, my mind racing. After a few days of anxiety-fueled brainstorming, I made a decision. I installed an app on Melanie's phone that allowed me to track her location and read her messages. I felt like a complete asshole, violating her privacy like this, but desperation has a way of blurring moral lines. What I discovered sent shockwaves through me. She was secretly working in the adult film industry. I couldn't believe it at first. The app revealed her location, and I saw it. She'd been visiting some shady production studio. Initially, she had taken a managerial role, but over time, it became clear she was performing in adult movies. I felt like my world was crumbling. I watched her movements, tracked her like prey, and learned that she regularly met with Trevor, the director. Each time I saw his name pop up on the app, a fire ignited in my chest. What was she doing with him? The internal struggle was unbearable. Should I confront her? Do I live with this knowledge and pretend everything's okay, or do I end this relationship immediately? I felt trapped in my own life, paralyzed by uncertainty and betrayal. Melanie eventually sensed something was wrong. She pressed me for answers, claiming it was just work and that she had no feelings for the other men involved. Her words felt hollow to me, like a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. "Caleb, you're being ridiculous," she said one night after I'd caught her slipping out of the house for a meeting. "It's just business. I swear, it's nothing like you think." I snapped back, anger boiling inside me. "Nothing like I think? You're lying to my face, Mel. You're in adult movies. How can you even say that to me?" She rolled her eyes, exasperated. "You're being dramatic. It's just a job. I do it for the money." "Money? Is that really what this is about? You didn't even have a passion for acting before." The quarrels became more frequent, more heated. It felt like we were in a relentless cycle of accusations and half-truths. I could feel the walls closing in on me as the woman I once loved turned into a stranger, someone I didn't recognize. As the nights stretched on, filled with tension and deceit, I realized that this was only the beginning of a fight I never wanted, but now had to face. I'd spent weeks gathering evidence, my heart pounding in my chest as I prepared to confront Melanie. Every piece of information I collected only deepened the pit in my stomach. I was done playing the fool. I needed to face her and lay it all out on the table. The reality was suffocating, and I couldn't let it linger in the shadows any longer. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday evening. I waited until she got home, her smile immediately hitting me like a punch in the gut. She had no idea what I knew, and that infuriated me even more. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Melanie, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Is this about the late nights again?" "I told you it's work," she snapped, already defensive. "No, it's not just that. It's about your work in adult films," I blurted out, unable to hold back any longer. Her face paled, and for a moment, I thought I'd struck her dumb. But then, she gathered herself and shrugged, a look of defiance crossing her features. "So what? It's just a job, Caleb." I felt my blood boil. "Just a job? You're appearing in adult movies, Melanie. How can you even say that to me?" She crossed her arms, her tone cold. "I started doing this for financial independence. You know how stagnant our lives have become. I'm tired of the monotony of this marriage." "Monotony?" My heart raced as her words sank in. "So, this is how you choose to escape? By getting intimate with other men in front of cameras?" "It's not like that. I don't have feelings for them. It's just acting," she argued, her voice rising in pitch, desperation creeping in. But I couldn't accept her excuses. I was tired of her trying to spin this in a way that absolved her of responsibility. "You think I care about your so-called feelings? This isn't about that. This is about you seeking attention and excitement because you think our relationship is boring. You're running away instead of working on us." Her expression hardened, and for a moment, I thought she might actually realize the gravity of what she was saying. Instead, she snapped back. "You don't understand what it's like to be me. I'm working to find my independence. Maybe if you were more exciting, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere." I felt like I'd been slapped across the face. "Exciting? You think jumping into bed with other men is excitement? You're losing sight of reality, Melanie. This is not who you are." After a terrible argument, one that left both of us reeling, she stormed off, saying she needed time to think. I paced the apartment, my anger morphing into despair. I couldn't believe this was happening to us. A few days later, I found out she was set to star in a new film, as if it were some casual job like being a barista or a retail worker. When I confronted her about it, she casually mentioned that she demanded one of the actresses be replaced on set because she didn't want to work with certain people. "What do you mean, certain people?" I pressed, incredulous. "Just people I don't vibe with, okay? It's my choice," she replied, annoyance seeping through her voice. That was the moment I snapped. "You're telling me you're acting in adult films while being picky about who you work with? How does that even make sense?" But she brushed me off, clearly irritated, and I knew we were heading down a dark path. That night, I met Declan at the bar, needing to vent and figure out my next steps. He listened to my ramblings as I downed drink after drink. The weight of my emotions was too much to bear. "So, she's really doing this?" Declan asked, eyebrows raised. "Yeah, and she thinks it's just fine. She claims it's for her independence, and that it's no big deal." I replied, frustration pouring from my words. Declan shook his head. "Dude, that's a disaster waiting to happen. She's not just playing with fire. She's jumping into a goddamn bonfire." "Tell me about it," I muttered, running a hand through my hair. "I just don't know what to do. I love her, but this is beyond messed up." He took a sip of his drink, deep in thought. "You know, maybe you should consider acting too. I mean, to really understand what she's going through." I laughed, half-heartedly. "You're joking, right?" But as the idea lingered in my mind, a dark part of me found it oddly appealing. What if I could step into her world? What if I could show her that I could play her game too? Seriously, think about it. If she's doing it, why not take a step back and flip the script? Show her what it's like to be on the other side, Declan suggested, leaning forward. The thought simmered in my head, and I couldn't shake it off. Maybe there was something to what Declan was saying. It was twisted, but then again, so was everything Melanie had done. As I left the bar that night, my mind was racing. I couldn't ignore the feeling that I was on the verge of making a choice that would either destroy everything or bring me some semblance of control back in my life. I wasn't ready to give up on us, but I had to confront this darkness head-on. I just hoped I could survive whatever came next. After a sleepless night, filled with the weight of my thoughts, I knew I had to see it for myself. I couldn't let the idea fester in my mind without understanding what my wife was really doing. I decided to visit the film set, where Melanie was filming her latest adult movie. I wanted to witness the reality of her world firsthand, even if it tore me apart inside. I arrived at the studio, my heart racing and my hands clammy. As I stepped inside, I was hit by a rush of sounds and smells that felt foreign and unsettling. The laughter, the chatter, and the scent of sweat mixed with cheap cologne enveloped me. The atmosphere was electric, yet I felt like a ghost, lurking in the shadows, watching my wife from a distance. Melanie was in the middle of a scene, and I tried to control my emotions as I observed her. The way she moved, the way she laughed, it was all too much. My anger twisted into something darker, a burning desire for revenge. How could she be so comfortable in this world? Did she really think it was all just acting? The thought that she could share herself with other men, even if it was under the guise of work, churned my stomach. As I stood there, I remembered Declan's words about flipping the script. What if I joined her in this madness? I could show her that I wasn't just some passive bystander in our life. I could become part of her world, just like she had chosen to step into this one. That thought spiraled into a reckless decision. I found the producer, Simon, who was managing the set. He was charismatic, with a confident swagger that made my skin crawl. He welcomed me, a smile stretching across his face. "What brings you here? You want to join us?" Before I knew it, I was signing a contract to participate in a scene. The thrill and dread coursed through my veins as I realized I was about to cross a line I never thought I would. I spent the next few days mentally preparing myself, rehearsing lines and trying to convince myself that this was just a way to gain leverage over Melanie. This was about showing her I was willing to embrace her world. When the day of the shoot finally arrived, I could barely contain my nerves. I arrived early, trying to act nonchalant as I wandered around the set. I saw Melanie in her element, her confidence radiating as she interacted with the crew. I wanted to feel proud of her, but all I felt was a surge of resentment. Then it happened. As the crew set up for the next scene, I saw her notice me. Her expression shifted from surprise to confusion, and then to a flicker of anger. I could see the gears turning in her mind as she processed my presence. I savored the moment, relishing the fact that I was now part of the process she had thrown herself into. "Caleb, what the hell are you doing here?" she demanded, storming over to me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Just trying to understand what you do, Melanie," I replied, a smirk creeping onto my lips. Thought I'd get a taste of the action myself. Her jaw dropped, and for a moment, I could see the panic in her eyes. "You can't be serious. You're not actually going to do this." "Why not? You seem to enjoy it." I shot back, feeling emboldened. "Maybe I want to show you that I can be a part of this too." "You're making a huge mistake, Caleb," she hissed, her voice low but laced with fury. "This isn't a game." "Oh, I think it is," I replied, my tone icy. "You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine." The confrontation was electric, tension crackling in the air between us. I could see the struggle in her eyes as she tried to maintain her composure, but inside, I felt victorious. I was reclaiming some of the power she had taken from me, even if it was through this twisted decision. As we prepared for the scene, my heart raced, not just from the nerves, but from the thrill of knowing that I was about to take a step into a world I never thought I'd enter. The actress who had originally been slated for my role, Serena, had refused to work with Melanie. Her absence had opened the door for me, and I relished the irony of it all. As the cameras rolled, I felt the weight of my actions bearing down on me. I was both a participant and an observer, caught in a surreal dance of emotions. With each moment on set, I felt the adrenaline surge, mixed with anger and betrayal. The way Melanie looked at me, a mix of shock and disbelief, fueled my resolve. By the end of the shoot, I hadn't found any physical satisfaction, but I felt a moral relief wash over me. It was a twisted victory, knowing that Melanie was now experiencing what I had felt for weeks. I had become a player in her game, a character in her narrative, and in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. The drive home after the shoot was an eerie silence, punctuated only by the hum of the engine. My mind was racing with a tumult of emotions, each one fighting for dominance. I had crossed a line that felt impossible to uncross. Although I didn't find any physical satisfaction in the experience, I did feel a strange sense of moral relief. In some twisted way, I had leveled the playing field. Melanie was now aware of the depths of betrayal I felt, and it was a hollow victory that left me feeling emptier than before. As we walked into our apartment, the tension was palpable. I could sense the storm brewing inside her, just waiting to erupt. "You think this was some sort of game, don't you?" she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You really think you could just waltz in and play along like it's nothing?" I turned to her, anger bubbling over. "You don't get to act surprised. You put us here, Melanie. You made this mess." "What mess?" "I was doing what I needed to do for myself," she retorted, her hands clenching into fists. "You're right. You needed to find yourself by sleeping with other men and parading around like a star. That's a real solution." I shot back, sarcasm dripping from my words. The argument escalated, voices rising, accusations flying like daggers. I felt a sense of inevitability wash over me. This was it. We were at the end of the line. The woman I had loved, the woman I thought I knew, had been replaced by someone who had shattered our vows and twisted our lives into a farce. In that moment of chaos, I made a decision. I'm filing for divorce. I declared, the words tasting both liberating and terrifying as they left my lips. Melanie's face fell, surprise morphing into anger. "You can't be serious. After everything we've been through? After everything you've done, you mean? This isn't about us anymore. It's about your choices," I said, each word heavy with finality. She tried to manipulate me, leaning into the shared memories of our life together, reminding me of our happier times, of laughter and love that now felt like distant echoes. "Caleb, we had something special. Can't you remember? You're throwing it all away." But I was resolute. Those memories don't mean shit anymore when they're overshadowed by what you've done. You chose this path, and now you have to face the consequences. The following weeks were a blur of legal meetings, emotional roller coasters, and the weight of decisions that loomed over me like a dark cloud. Claire, my lawyer, became my anchor in the storm. "Stay firm, Caleb. Don't let her guilt trip you. You need to focus on your future," she advised, her voice steady and reassuring. But Melanie was relentless. The divorce process quickly turned into a battlefield. She refused to discuss dividing our assets, clinging to everything like a lifeline. I could see the desperation in her eyes, the fear of losing not just our home, but the life she had built. "You're being unreasonable," she would shout, her tone oscillating between fury and sorrow. "We can still work this out." I felt a surge of emotion unlike anything I had experienced before. For the first time, I revealed the depths of my feelings. "You don't get to manipulate me anymore, Melanie. I'm not the same person you can walk all over. I deserve better than this." But each confrontation left me feeling more hollow, more drained. The pain of it all was suffocating, as if I was watching the last remnants of my marriage dissolve before my eyes. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I learned that Melanie had already moved on. It hit me like a punch to the gut. She was seeing someone new, a guy named Zane. A quick search revealed that their relationship had started before our official separation, and it felt like salt in an open wound. My heart sank as I realized that she hadn't just betrayed our marriage. She had emotionally checked out long before I'd confronted her. The news rocked me to my core. I found myself spiraling into a dark place, wondering if I had ever truly known her at all. "I can't believe you'd stoop so low," I said when she finally brought it up, my voice trembling with anger. "I deserve happiness too, Caleb," she replied, a sharp edge in her tone. "I'm not going to sit around and wait for you to make a decision." "Happy? You think jumping into another relationship will make you happy? This is the mess you've created, Melanie. I'm just cleaning up the aftermath." I shot back, frustration boiling over. Each interaction only fueled my determination to move forward with the divorce. I was no longer just reacting to her decisions. I was taking control of my life. With Claire's guidance, I steeled myself for the long and arduous process ahead. Every day brought new challenges, new emotional hurdles. But in my heart, I knew this was the only path forward. I had to let go of the past, even if it was excruciating. As I looked out at the life we had built together, now crumbling, I felt a spark of hope deep within. I would rise from the ashes of this marriage, no matter how long it took. The days stretched into weeks after the divorce, and for the first time in ages, I could breathe. It felt surreal to finally close that chapter of my life, but the weight of it still lingered. I had to focus on myself, on healing and rebuilding. The journey wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to reclaim my life. I made a commitment to prioritize my physical and mental health. I joined a gym, not the kind Melanie had frequented, where she flaunted her newfound identity, but a local place where I could sweat out my frustrations without the constant reminders of what I had lost. Each session became a cathartic release, allowing me to channel my anger and pain into something productive. I also started seeing Larry, a therapist who specialized in relationship trauma. The first time I walked into his office, I felt like I was stepping into the unknown. "So, Caleb, what brings you here?" he asked, his voice calm and inviting. "I just got out of a messy divorce, and I need to figure out how to move forward," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "Let's unpack that," he said, and for the next hour, I poured out the chaos that had consumed my life. Talking to Larry became a lifeline, a safe space to vent my frustrations and fears. Slowly, I began to regain my confidence, to rediscover who I was outside of the wreckage of my marriage. In the weeks following the divorce, I found myself craving connection, but I wasn't quite ready to dive into another relationship. I didn't want to rush into anything, to make the same mistakes I had made before. That's when Declan stepped in, ever the supportive friend. One night, over drinks, he casually mentioned a woman he thought I might like. "Her name is Raina," he said, leaning back in his chair, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "She's been through a tough breakup too. I think you guys could really hit it off." "Maybe, but I'm not looking for anything serious right now," I replied, cautious. "I don't want to rush into a rebound. Just meet her. What's the worst that could happen?" Declan urged, nudging me playfully. After some back and forth, I agreed to grab coffee with Raina. The first meeting was low-key, just a casual chat over lattes at a little cafe downtown. As we talked, I was surprised at how easy it was to connect with her. She had this warmth about her, a genuine kindness that drew me in. We shared stories of our pasts. Both of us had faced heartbreak, but in different ways. "I used to think I had it all figured out," she said, her eyes reflecting a depth of understanding. "But then everything fell apart, and I realized how important it is to truly know yourself before getting involved with someone else." Her words struck a chord. It was refreshing to speak to someone who understood the complexities of love and loss without judgment. We exchanged numbers and agreed to keep in touch, but I made it clear that I wasn't ready for anything serious. Meanwhile, Melanie tried to reconnect. The first message came as a shock. "Caleb, I've been thinking a lot about us. I know I messed up, and I'd like to talk," it read. I felt a rush of anger and confusion. How could she even think I'd want to have a conversation after everything? I didn't respond, refusing to fall back into her web of manipulation. Days turned into weeks, and her messages continued to pop up, each one more desperate than the last. "I miss you," she'd text. "Can we at least meet for coffee?" Each time, I ignored her. I was determined to move on, to not let her back into my life. I had to protect my newfound stability. In therapy, Larry reinforced my resolve. "You're doing the right thing, Caleb. It's essential to establish boundaries. This is your time to heal, and letting her back in could jeopardize that," he advised. As I focused on myself, I felt the layers of pain slowly peeling away. I started jogging in the mornings, experimenting with new recipes, and even picking up an old hobby, painting. I lost myself in colors and brushes, finding solace in creating something beautiful from the chaos of my life. Over time, I started to let my guard down with Raina. We'd meet regularly, sharing laughter and stories. It felt nice to open up to someone who wasn't connected to my past, who didn't know the hurt I'd been through. Each meeting brought a sense of hope, a reminder that life could still be beautiful. But as much as I enjoyed Raina's company, I remained cautious. I wasn't ready to jump back into the deep end of relationships. I wanted to heal completely before allowing anyone else to take up space in my heart. As the weeks passed, I realized recovery wasn't just about moving on. It was about learning to love myself again, to find joy in the little things. I was reclaiming my life, one day at a time, and although the road was long, I felt more equipped to face whatever came next. As the months rolled by following the divorce, I began to sense a shift within myself. Each passing day felt like a step away from the turmoil of my past and toward a brighter future. I was determined to reclaim my life, and it was exhilarating. I focused intently on my physical and mental health. I joined a local gym, not the trendy one Melanie frequented, but a no-frills place where I could sweat out my frustrations without the memories of her lingering around. The first few workouts were tough. My muscles screamed for mercy after months of neglect. Yet, as the weeks passed, I found my rhythm. Each session became a therapeutic escape, allowing me to channel my pent-up anger and disappointment into something productive. Alongside my physical journey, I started seeing Larry, a therapist who specialized in relationship trauma. Our sessions were enlightening. "So, Caleb, what brings you here?" he asked during our first meeting, his voice steady and inviting. I felt a wave of vulnerability wash over me as I recounted the chaos of my marriage, the betrayal, and my struggle to move forward. As I spoke, I felt the weight of my past begin to lift. Larry helped me understand that healing is not a straight path. He encouraged me to embrace my feelings, anger, sadness, confusion, and use them as stepping stones rather than obstacles. I started to recognize that I was more than my pain. I was a survivor, ready to face whatever came next. With a clearer mindset, I finally took the plunge and launched my own business, a long-dormant dream that had been sidelined during my marriage. The excitement of building something from the ground up fueled my passion. The late nights spent drafting business plans and designing my website invigorated me. When the launch day arrived, it felt surreal. I looked around the small space I had rented, filled with friends, family, and colleagues who had supported me through the darkest times. Each cheer and smile was a reminder that I was not alone. I had carved a new path, and the energy in the room was electric. Amidst this transformation, Declan played a crucial role in my life, always encouraging me to step out of my comfort zone. One evening, over beers at our usual bar, he mentioned a woman he thought I might hit it off with. "Her name is Raina," he said, leaning in. "She's been through a tough breakup too, but I think you guys could really click." I was hesitant at first. "I'm not looking for anything serious right now, Declan. I just got out of a marriage. I don't want to rush into another relationship. Just meet her. What's the worst that could happen?" he urged, nudging me playfully. After a bit of coaxing, I agreed to meet Raina for coffee. The first meeting was casual, sit in a cozy cafe filled with the aroma of fresh pastries. As we talked, I was surprised by how easy it felt. She had an infectious laugh and a warmth that put me at ease. We shared stories of our pasts, both of us navigating the wreckage of failed relationships. "I used to think I had it all figured out," Raina said, her eyes reflecting a depth of understanding. "But then everything fell apart, and I realized how important it is to truly know yourself before getting involved with someone else." Her words resonated deeply with me. It was refreshing to speak to someone who understood the complexities of love and loss without judgment. We exchanged numbers, and I felt a flicker of hope for the future. Maybe there was still love out there for me, something genuine and real. As we continued to meet, our connection deepened. We discovered shared interests in art, travel, and even cooking. One weekend, we took a spontaneous trip to the coast. The wind whipped through our hair as we strolled along the beach, laughter echoing in the salty air. I felt light, as if the weight of my past was finally starting to lift. Each moment spent with her helped me let go of the pain I had carried for so long. Just when I thought I had fully moved on, Melanie unexpectedly re-entered my life. One afternoon, I received a text from her that left me rattled. "Caleb, I've been thinking a lot about us. I know I messed up, and I'd like to talk." It read. Anger surged through me. Did she really think I would just open the door and welcome her back after everything? When we finally met, I was struck by how different she seemed. More vulnerable, perhaps, but that didn't soften the anger boiling inside me. "I've had time to think," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "I made mistakes, and I want to make things right." "Make things right? You can't just waltz back into my life after everything you've done and expect me to forgive you." I snapped, my words fueled by years of hurt. "You chose this path. You need to own it." She tried to twist my words, evoking memories of our good times together, but I stood firm. "Those memories don't change the reality of what you did. I can go back to that. I refuse to be a part of your past anymore." As she walked away, defeated, I felt a bittersweet relief wash over me. I was no longer the man willing to settle for half-hearted apologies or accept blame for someone else's choices. I was moving forward, finally free from the shackles of that toxic relationship. With every passing day, I felt the past fading further into the background. I was forging a new identity, built on self-respect and determination. I threw myself into my work and my budding relationship with Raina, who inspired me to embrace life. We started planning small weekend trips, exploring art exhibits, and trying out new restaurants. One Saturday, we spent the day painting at a local studio, each of us lost in our creativity. The experience was freeing. I had finally let go of the chains that had held me back for so long. As summer turned into fall, I hosted a launch party for my business, inviting friends, family, and colleagues to celebrate this new beginning. Standing in that room, surrounded by laughter and cheers, I felt a sense of belonging and accomplishment that had eluded me for far too long. Raina was by my side, her smile brightening the space. As we danced together, I realized that I had finally let go of the chains that had held me back. I was not just surviving, I was thriving. The memories of my past no longer haunted me. They served as reminders of my resilience. As I stood outside, taking a deep breath of the cool evening air, I felt ready for whatever lay ahead. The stars sparkled above me, a beautiful reminder that there was a vast world out there waiting for me. I was determined to embrace every moment and build a life that reflected the person I had become. This was my new beginning, and I was more than ready for it.